Welcome to the Tipsy Guest Podcast. I am your host, Marco Buenrostro, and every week I'm here with the top industry experts, amazing clients, and all my vendor BFFs to bring you the best tips, advice, and juicy behind-the-scenes stories to make wedding and event planning a breeze. So grab your favorite drink and let's get this party started! Hey guys, welcome back to the Tipsy Guest. I am Marco, your host, and today I'm very excited. I have Matt from Power Sounds, and Matt, I've known you for such a long time. How long has it been?
I don't know, man. I met you when I was like 18, 19. I'm 27 now. So a while.
What?
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, we're going to be going on 10 years soon.
That's
for sure.
that's a long time. That's almost as long as I've been in business with the photo booth company.
Well, I think I met you when you were first
Right
starting.
at the very beginning. Yeah. So we met at a wedding fair. I'm
Yep.
sure you guys have, if you're planning your wedding, I'm sure you've been to wedding fairs where you go see all the vendors, you go talk to them, try out all the cool stuff that they have out there to offer. So yeah, we were neighbors and we just randomly started chatting and I guess probably not even a year later, we moved in together to an office.
Yeah, like almost, you're right, like in less than a year.
Yeah, so we've been
us.
sharing an office for the business for almost 8-9 years now. And we always try to send clients to each other. I think our setups, my setup with the photo booth and his setup with the DJ, they really complement each other. And we always end up working weddings together and events.
Yeah, because I feel like both of us feel like less is more sometimes. So I feel like, we're able to work together and we have the same vision.
We have the same vision. We have the same style.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
so we work really well together.
For sure.
But okay, so how, I know you've been DJing for about, 9-10 years now.
Well, maybe a little more because I started when I was with my dad, like 13. So maybe 14 years. Yeah, wow. I feel old.
Cool.
I feel old.
What
right?
is your favorite thing? You've been doing it. You're so young and you've been doing it such a long time. Like, what is your favorite thing about DJing?
So when it comes to like a wedding, I would say probably my favorite thing is, talking to the couple and then kind of bringing that vision to life. But in general, DJing, whether I'm doing like a wedding or nightlife or whatever, it's just kind of, I don't know if you've ever seen that Disney movie. It's called Soul.
I don't think so.
Anyways,
Yes. The guy that dies, right?
Yes. Well, they talk about like them getting in that zone.
It's
For me, it's a real thing. You kind of get in that zone, and you're just kind of, everything either is working. It's good when it's working, and then you're kind of out of the zone sometimes. But yeah, that's like my favorite thing is when you're in that zone. It's a real thing. It's special for sure.
It's interesting because I always, when I'm working weddings and I just randomly start looking around, I always see the DJ very focused.
Yeah.
You guys have the hardest job at the event. At a wedding, you have to make sure that everybody's having fun, that the dance floor is always going. How do you deal with situations where there's nobody on the dance floor?
Yeah, for me, I think it depends. There's a lot of different variations to me. So first question is, okay, what's the vibe? Like, what are they? Are they? Maybe they're not on the dance floor, but are they at the bar grabbing a drink?
Yeah.
Or is it really hot in the venue and maybe nobody wants to dance because it's really, really hot? Or there's so many different factors that I look at, which is like, okay, do I push the pace? Do I slow it down? Do I coast? There's sometimes I'm like, okay, I need to coast because everybody's at the bar right now. Maybe they haven't had enough drinks, So a lot of what we do is kind of reading, seeing what's happening.
Yeah.
Even from like intros, I can kind of tell what kind of crowd we have, like, and not the kind of crowd, but maybe mindset wise where they're at right now. Maybe cocktail was a little mellow, it was a little chill. So we're about to do intros and they're coming into intros and maybe they're just kind of
so they
still
go through
chill.
phases.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, because how long do you normally play at a wedding?
Typically 5 hours. If we do ceremony, it's 6. So like most couples do an hour for cocktail, hour for dinner. Usually 2 hours of open dance. It depends if you're pushing it 3, right? Like if you have the guest count, I feel like you can get away with 3 hours of open dance. But most of the time, I feel like the safe spot's 2. So it just depends on the.
I guess on the guest count and all that stuff. Because I had a wedding one time where people left right after dinner.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually just had that happen this past week. Luckily for the couple, a lot of the older guests left and the younger ones stayed. But right after dinner, I would probably say like maybe 30% of their guests left.
Wow.
So yeah, it's definitely a thing, and that goes into the planning, right? It's like, well, what percentage of your guests are going to be there? Are they dancers? Are they not? So little things like that.
So I guess touching into that subject. So how does a couple book you? I mean, what is the process? I mean, they either send you a DM on Instagram or go to your website, go to the office, see you at a wedding fair.
Right.
Like, what is the process of how they can book you guys?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, they'll find us online, so on Google, on Instagram. Then they'll go to our website, just send like a form submission, and then from there, the first thing is consultation. So because I feel like we need to get to know them a little bit, and they need to get to know us. So that's I think, number one piece of advice for couples that are going to be booking entertainment is you got to have a consultation with entertainment.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are like, okay, it's a DJ. We're going to hire a DJ, but every DJ is different. Every entertainment company is different. Even things culturally, right? Like, and I feel like at that consultation, that's kind of where you set your expectations for them, for the entertainment or DJ, and kind of say like, you kind of feel each other out, So I think that's super, super important. If you're gonna book entertainment, you have to have a consultation. But after that, from that consultation, we're gonna ask things like, okay, what style of music are y'all into? What regions are family from, right? For me, that tells a lot of kind of the style of music, and I'll kind of try to pick at it like, okay, what style of music are we looking at? Is there anything culturally we need to be aware of? Because sometimes I feel like we're in a bubble, but different regions handle different things. Yeah, like I just had a couple, everybody came in from Louisiana. Everybody. I know Louisiana music, because I've had clients from Louisiana, but I've always had half and half. So the bride was either from here and the groom was from Louisiana. That was the way it went. But this time, everybody was from Louisiana. So like even during dinner, they do everything different. They really, I mean, the way they explained it to me, they didn't do things formally. They're like, so at the end of dinner, the dad came up. He's like, hey, you're going to pick it up? And I'm like, yeah. I told him, the coordinator hasn't told me to open up the floor. He's like, oh, don't, dude, just pick up the music, bro. People start dancing. Okay. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So that's what I did, and it worked.
That sounds like a fun one.
It was fun. It was a lot. It was a big amount of guests. So yeah, it was really, really fun.
Have you ever, have you ever had a couple that disagree on music completely?
All the time.
So what happens then?
Well, you got to kind of talk through it with them. Because so after they book us, right, the next major thing is a final consultation 2 weeks out. And that's usually where they get into it, right?
Oh.
So it's like, and it's very, very normal though. Because I always say, at a wedding, you're bringing two different people together. So people have differences in music. Their families are different, right? So it always happens. Like I just had a consultation the other day, and they were like, the bride or the groom was like, yeah, we don't want hip hop, man. We don't want rap. Because I always ask them like, hey, are we okay with it? Or are we not okay with it? Because it's very popular. And I kind of want to know my guidelines. So they're like, the groom was like, nah, I don't want it. And the bride was like, but I want hip hop. So right there, I'm like, okay. So like right there, I kind of tell them like, okay, well, we're going to read the room. We're going to really pay attention to who we have there. So let's say in that scenario, right, like the groom's like, hey, my family's heavy into country. I don't think hip hop's going to work. I'm like, well, we're not going to start off with hip hop, So I think that's where a lot of reading the room has to come into play because, as the night progresses, we get crazier. It's just normal.
Oh, no, yeah.
People drink more.
Definitely.
It's just normal. The older crowd usually leaves, and we're kind of there.
And then the party starts.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the main thing, right? Is really kind of working that in your head as a bride and a groom, who's going to be there and how much of that percentage is going to be made up of family or friends. Like if it's more family, well, then that's who we're going to try to keep there, right? Yeah. So just a big thing for sure.
When it comes to, I guess the music selection, do you, and I know you said you got to read the crowd and everything, but let's say, for example, when you meet with the couple, is there a list of songs that you present to them? Is there a list of songs that they bring to you? How do you guys agree on what, if there is a must, like they tell you like, hey, we really want this.
Right.
Like, how does that work?
So most of the time at the initial consultation, I'll ask, what's your vision? And most of the time they'll be like, we don't know. Right. Like they never,
That's
some
always
people,
the answer.
Yeah. And for some people, I mean, they've never booked a DJ, right? They're like,
Yeah.
well, just DJ. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to understand what you're looking for. But I mean, once we get past that, we get to the final, usually we ask for 25 specific must play songs, and they don't have to be from one genre. They could be from anything. But I
And
always
then you build around.
and I build around it because I always tell them we don't know what's going to happen at your wedding, right?
Yeah.
We can open up the floor and then boom, it's 100 and we don't slow down, right? Or we can kind of maybe start and we can kind of feel the crowd like, okay, maybe they're reserved. And I always tell everybody it's not a bad thing, but maybe we need to nudge them in that direction, not force them, because I feel like when you force anything, they're just going to leave, right? So it's kind of like maybe nudging them in that direction. So at the end of dinner, maybe before toast, right, we start picking the music up a little bit. But a lot of like their selections is what we feed off of.
Yeah.
So it's like give us genres, artists, eras. Because let's say we're talking about country music, right? Well, country music, there's so many different styles of it. There's like Texas country, there's classic country, there's like pop country.
There's Beyonce country.
Exactly. There's Beyonce country. So like I want to kind of get a feel for that. And that's kind of how we'll start building. So like even for cocktail, right? Some couples will give us a list for cocktails. Some couples will give us a list for dinner. But where we kind of want that freedom is during open dance because we want to be able to piece everything together. Let's say we start with something that's not really working too much. We're not going to stay there and play it for 30 minutes. You know, we're going to move on and we're going to make it make sense. We're going to pretty much bring their list together.
Okay.
That's what I say.
And then how do you guys, I mean, I know, of course, you know, working weddings throughout the years, you know, the planner always sends you a timeline and, you know, that's normally how you outline or how you plan your evening or whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, would you say the timeline is always 100% on point?
Oh, no.
Or,
No, never.
Like, what do you do in situations like that? Because I don't think I've ever been to a wedding where everything is on time.
It's never on time. Like I always tell everybody like, hey, this is a guide.
Yeah.
It's really a guide, right? I always say, I mean, you have like 10, 15 minutes of cushion. But like, for instance, a couple months ago, we had a wedding. The photos took a little bit longer, but I think it's because the bride really wanted certain shots. So, you know, usually photographers will be like, okay, we got to move. And I think she really wanted them. And we know sunsets only last
I mean, for
so
the
long.
photographers, they have to be at a specific time somewhere, you know, to capture that moment.
Yeah, and I think part of it too was because maybe ceremony started a little bit later, so it kind of pushed everything back. And the coordinator was like, "Hey, like we're gonna right now the way it's planned, we're supposed to open floor and 10 minutes in bouquet garter." She's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Well, why don't we just let's push bouquet garter back like maybe 30 minutes in because I feel like you're really." You know, jerking the crowd around at that point because you're like, okay, we're gonna open, cool, people are into it, bouquet garter, you know. And not only that, I kind of see sometimes the bouquet garter is like, if they're gonna do it, maybe as like a break, right?
Yeah.
We kind of break and maybe we switch up styles of music at that point too. So yeah, I mean, weddings never go on time.
There's always unexpected things happening at weddings. I mean, there's always something fun. There's always something dramatic. There's so much that goes on behind the closed curtain that you know that the couples don't know, and that's exactly why we're here. We wanna make sure that your planning is beautiful. That I mean, you're supposed to be having fun when you're planning your wedding.
Yes.
You know, it's not just about because I've had those clients that are so stressed about certain situations.
Dude, yes.
I'm like, relax.
Yes.
Like, because sometimes they're like, at least with me, like they're always like, well, do you know how to do this? And what about this? And then this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And can we make sure to turn off the lights when we're doing the toast so that it's not distracted? I'm like, girl, I got you.
Yeah.
Like this is your first rodeo. It's not mine. Like we know how things work. I mean, I'm sure it's the same for you. Like you know how to deal with situations, and the couples might be so stressed about it, trying to make you like understand certain things, and you're like, girl, I know this. Like I've been doing this for such a long time. What is one thing I would say, I guess since we're talking about this, what is one thing that couples normally like tell you or ask you or that you're like, I know, like this is something I do all the time?
I would probably say sometimes I'll slow it down a little bit. Just depends. It just depends. But sometimes I'll slow it down. Because let's say dance floor open, it's been open. Maybe we slapped them really hard at the beginning. We hit them hard. We're going. We're pushing the pace. And maybe they have like 120 guests, right? It's not too many. It's not that big of a group. I'll maybe slow it down, right? So maybe halfway through, I'll play something slow, nothing too crazy though, not too long, 2 or 3 songs. I'll play it, and every once in a while, a couple will be like, "Can you pick it back up?" And I'm like, "Look, we have a certain pool of people," and I don't tell them, but I kind of explain to them, "Hey, I'm gonna pick it back up," but my dad always says, "Hey, sometimes you got to switch it up a little bit because hearing the same beat over and over and over, it kind of gets old, you know." So I can switch it up different ways. I mean, it doesn't always have to be slowing it down, but sometimes that will happen. They'll be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I got you. Trust me, I got you.
Yeah, like
I got you. I can see.
They'll freak out for a second and thinking like you're ruining the mood.
Yeah.
When you know exactly what you're doing. Like you know the crowd, even though these group of people are new to you.
Right.
Like you know how to read a crowd.
Well, I think that's the other thing too is everything I do is with intention. It's not to do it just because, they had this on there, boom, I'm going to hit it slow right now.
Yeah.
You know, or sometimes it's strategic. You know, it's strategic. Like, okay, I want to end on a high note. I'm going to pull back just a little bit so I can get that second win later. It doesn't happen all the time. There's some weddings, I'll be honest, like we just run all the way through. Yeah. And they don't really have a problem. But if it's maybe on their must plays, right? It's one of those 25 songs. I have to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this in a way where we're going to end and it makes sense, or they have some crazy stuff, right? Like crazy stuff that I don't think is going to work early on in the night. So I'm going to put this here. And we're going to get into the crazy stuff right after, you know? Yeah. So it all just depends. I mean, it all just depends on what's happening. And that's the hardest thing for them to understand. Depends on what's happening, right? Because you can map out music, but it doesn't mean people are going to respond. Yeah. You know, it's like having a jukebox at a bar.
So how do you prepare? I mean, let's say they give you the 25 songs that they really, really want.
Right.
I guess, weddings are normally Friday, Saturday. I mean, there's weddings every day, but mainly, Friday or Saturday.
Right.
Do you practice during the week? Like, what is your process leading up to a wedding?
Yeah, I practice a lot. A lot. Yeah, my dad's like, "Dude, you're crazy."
Because, I feel like your practice would be like every event. Like, that you could use that as practice. I mean, and again, you've been doing this for such a long time.
Yeah.
But I guess, so let's say, okay, you practice.
Yeah.
And do you always go through those 25 songs? Have you ever missed a song and then you get a complaint later from the couple saying like, "Hey, we didn't hear that one specific song"?
Well, okay, for instance, this past Friday, I just had a wedding this past Friday. The groom was heavy into like Coetzel style. It's country, right? And so I did it, slowed it down, right? And I was like, okay, cool, because they were a younger crowd. I got back into the bride's like, and when I got back into the country, the bride was like, "You know what? Yeah, we're good with the country." So there we go. Like I had part of their songs. I didn't play them because the couple was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
But when it comes to practice, depending on the songs they give me, I'm like, okay, how am I going to get into this? How am I going to get out of this? Because we mix everything. So maybe it's something we're not familiar with, right? How am I going to get into it? How am I going to get out to it? It's giving me, if I need to spend the time with the song to kind of say, okay, this is the feel I'm getting with it. And then from there, how am I going to get out of it to something that's going to make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So let's say it's all over the place. I'm like, okay, what else can I bring in to bridge it together and everything? And I'll be honest, there's times I practice. I built a whole folder. I don't use it. I don't use it. I don't use it. I don't even use it. And it happens, I would say, like 70% of the time. I practice. I don't use it because the crowd's responding different than I would think that they were going to respond. There's sometimes I'm like, okay, cool. Our prep is working. I got it. And a lot of it, it's like, nope. A lot of it's you prep. And then you get there, and of course, it's different. It's always different. So,
you got to go with the vibe.
You have to. Work. You have to.
What's one thing? And I know this is a very cliche question, but what is one thing that you would say makes you different from other DJs? I guess let's keep the wedding. Not events in general, but like for weddings. Like, what makes you different than other DJs?
That's super, super hard for me to answer because I've never been to an event with another DJ. I would say from what people tell me, I guess maybe the way we read the crowd is a little bit different than other DJs. People, I've had other vendors tell us like, "Hey man, every time we're with you, it's different.
Yeah.
It's always different music. It's never really the same." And I mean, for us, that's with every client. I mean, we never play the same mix. We may play the same songs. We have some routines that we'll use because we'll know, okay, we can use this and break off into this genre or whatever the case is. But I think maybe we talked about that practice, like that. And I don't know if whether DJ. I mean, I'm sure they practice. I mean,
because honestly, I've been to some weddings where it's just music playing. Like, I mean, you mix live the entire time.
Yeah, we mix live. So maybe that. In some cases, I know a lot of DJs now do mix, but I mean, everything for me is always changing, depending on. To give you an example, depending on what's happening, but to give you an example, age range, right? Let's say we're dealing with the older guest count, right? They're a lot older. Then I'm not gonna push that pace and mix super super quick. Maybe I'm gonna slow it down a little bit because they're probably not used to it, right?
Yeah,
like,
so you gotta adapt to
the
crowd.
They have the old saying, like it's a well-known saying. He's playing the songs too fast, or we have a young crowd. I know I can push that pace because they've been to clubs, they've been out. I can push that pace. So maybe that's probably what sets us apart a little bit.
Okay. So now let's talk about. This is my favorite part of the episode.
I don't even know what he's gonna bring up.
So I mean, this is the Tipsy Guest, which
right.
We gotta have our drink. What are you drinking today? Let's see. I have some wine.
I have lemonade.
I don't even lemonade. No, I gotta have wine. When I'm not drinking wine, it could be champagne or sometimes coffee. I love coffee. I mean, if you know me, I'm always drinking coffee. But today, of course, we're going to go with the wine. So speaking of, a tipsy guest,
right.
Have you ever had to deal with something very dramatic? And it doesn't have to be a guest. It could be a vendor, another vendor. I mean, there's so many vendors involved in an event. Let's just talk about other people here.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anything where, it could be dramatic, it could be funny, it could be just something random?
I would probably say it's a guest. A couple, maybe a month ago, we're doing a wedding. I don't know if you remember that song. It was like that pump up the volume.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We know that song,
yeah.
Right? And the couple was like 19. So I had one guest. They were like, "Hey, can you throw that song in? My husband used to be a wedding DJ. The wife, his wife was asking me." And I'm always like, "Okay, let me see what I can do." Right? I don't think I'm gonna stick my neck out.
I mean, they're 19. They're not gonna know.
They're not gonna know that song, right? They're not gonna know that song. So I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna play that. So she comes up at the end of the night. She was like, "You suck. You had one song. You suck. This, and that." I mean, I feel like that's a typical thing that as DJs we probably deal with, right? Like all the time, especially when they're drunk. And I think you just have to accept the fact you're not going to please everybody. Like you're just not.
I mean, it's going to happen at every single wedding. At least like for me,
yeah.
It always happens in the photo booth. When we're getting ready to close, I normally go up to the DJ and I'm like, "Hey, can you make an announcement? There's only 15 minutes left in the photo booth."
Right.
So like, sometimes we wait until those 15 minutes. I mean, we always close at the time that we're supposed to close. But, there's always that one person that's like, "Hey, can we take another photo? Can we take another photo?" So I'm always like, we made an announcement like 15 minutes ago that it was going to shut down. If I say yes to you, then the next person is going to say the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. We try to accommodate. But, one thing is going over like 5 minutes, but then another thing is like staying for an extra 15, 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless it's the bride and the groom.
Yep.
I got to tell them like, "Hey, I'm sorry, but, we've been here for 3 hours. And the photo booth has been open for 3 hours. And you're coming the last 2 minutes, trying to extend."
Yeah.
So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's always the dynamic when you're planning a wedding is you have different ages, different cultures, you have different everything. So it's just kind of figuring out how you're going to get through it,
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming by. We're running out of time. It was fun. I mean,
for sure. Thanks for having me.
These are the type of conversations that me and Matt have on a daily basis.
All the time.
We're always trying to work on things together, either at the office. I'll go to his house. He'll go to my house.
Yeah.
We go somewhere and sit down and start strategizing on what to do next.
Yeah.
So this right here is exactly our daily conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
I want you to tell our listeners, where can they find you? Can they follow you on social media, text you, email you? How can they reach out to you guys?
Yeah, I would say on Instagram at PowerSoundsDJ. We keep that really, really updated. And then online at PowerSoundsDJ.com. Online, that's like our hub. I mean, we have everything. We have, gallery, but then mixes. Like I always tell couples when they're thinking about hiring us, like go listen to some mixes. If you like what you hear, then reach out. Just keep in mind the music changes for every situation. We have some stuff on there from corporate, different weddings, so it just always changes. But those are our two main that we really keep updated for sure.
Okay, well, there you go. Make sure you follow Power Sounds. And again, Matt, thank you so much for coming.
I appreciate it.
And I'm sure I'll have you on a different episode. We have so much to talk about that we cannot cover in one episode.
No, it's too much. It's too much.
So we'll definitely have you back. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. Please tell your BFFs about the podcast. Spread the word. Let's help you with your planning. And it doesn't have to be just a wedding. It could be any type of event. We will be having so many vendors. Each episode is going to be so unique to each individual vendor. So please spread the word. Let's keep the party going. See you next time. Thanks for listening to the Tipsy Guest Podcast. If you know someone who could benefit from these tips, spread the love and share it with them. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Next round's on us. Same time, same place. Cheers! This podcast is brought to you by MVP Photo Booth, the #1 photo booth rental company in San Antonio, Austin, and Central Texas.